Let's take a look at some data that's grouped into intervals from 60 to 69. There are 3 scores. 70 to 79, there's 4 scores. And 80 to 89, there's 2 scores. We're going to represent each interval with a data value. So the first interval will take the midpoint of 64.5. The second interval will take the midpoint of 74.5, and the third interval will take the midpoint of 84.5, and we're going to assume that each one of those occurs with the corresponding frequency we see over here. The first thing I need to do is, because I'm going to be calculating the deviation from the mean, I need to figure out what the mean is. So I take 64.5 times 3 plus 74.5 times 4 plus 84.5 times 2, add those all up, and then I divide by 9. Notice here I'm actually dividing by the total number, not one less. You do the one less when you're dealing with the variance and the standard deviation for a sample. So working this out gives me an answer of approximately 73.39. Now we need to figure out what the deviations are. So 64.5 minus 73.39 gives me negative 8.89. 74.5 minus 73.39 gives me 1.11. And 84.5 minus 73.39 gives me 11.11. So I take those representative values and I'm finding the deviations from the mean. Now we need to go ahead and square those and add them up. But remember, there were 3 data values that had a deviation of negative 8.89, so I take 3 times negative 8.89 squared. There were 4 data values that had a deviation of 1.11, so 4 times 1.11 squared. And there were 2 data values that had a deviation of 11.11, so I get 2 times 11.11 squared. The most common thing that students forget to do is to multiply those frequencies in there. The sum of my frequencies is 9, so I'm going to divide by 9 minus 1, and that gives me a sample variance of 224.44. If now I go ahead and take the square root of that, I get a standard deviation of 15.6. So these scores were on average about 15.6 from the mean of 73.39. So it seems like they were fairly spread out. It is kind of hard to say how spread out unless we're comparing it to another class. Then we can definitely say that one is more spread out than the other. To do this on your graphing calculator, you'll need to enter the data as we talked about before, and when you calculate out in 1var_stats on your graphing calculator, it will give you what the standard deviation is for when you divide by either n or n-1, which means either the population standard deviation or the sample standard deviation.